There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from living a double life. Not a scandalous life, but a performative one. It is the tiredness of maintaining an identity that looks completely whole on the outside while you feel quietly fractured on the inside. You find yourself constantly managing a difficult split. You manage the gap between who you present yourself to be and who you actually are when the lights go out. You try to bridge what you sincerely believe with what you secretly desire. And beneath all the effort to look steady, a deeper fear keeps running in the background. It is the terrifying thought that if people or God saw the unedited version of your internal world, you would be completely rejected. This is the inner atlas, where we map the inner life. Most of us don't realize how much energy we burn just trying to keep our internal contradictions from colliding. We live in a state of chronic self-monitoring, constantly scanning our environments to ensure our presentation matches what people expect from us. This shows up clearly in our spiritual lives. You might be sitting in a space of worship, saying all the right words, yet internally you are tracking your own motives. You are wondering whether you actually love God or just love the safety of looking like a good person. When you live this way, hidden shame becomes your shadow. You hide the parts of you that feel messy or unhealed, convinced that spiritual maturity means the absolute absence of struggle, rather than the courage to be honest about it. The real tragedy of this performance is that even when people praise you, it doesn't land. You cannot receive love for a persona you know is curated, so the applause of others only deepens your isolation, leaving you spiritually off balance. Eventually, the human soul hits a wall. You realize you don't just want to behave better or look cleaner. You carry a deep, aching longing to finally be a single, coherent piece, to be whole, honest, and completely at peace within your own skin. What you are experiencing in this exhaustion is a well-known psychological mechanism called inner fragmentation. Human beings are incredibly skilled at dividing themselves. When our deep desires, our actual behaviors, and our professed beliefs do not match, the mind experiences a severe tension called cognitive dissonance. Maintaining this split requires an immense amount of daily mental and emotional energy. Your ego steps in to construct a false self, a beautifully designed identity built specifically to secure approval, avoid rejection, and preserve your image. But here is what we must understand. This inward fragmentation completely distorts our perception. A divided self cannot see reality clearly. Because you are constantly defending your self-image, you end up filtering all truth through a thick lens of fear, pride, and emotional avoidance. You're not alone if this inner noise is something you recognize. True psychological integration means stepping out of this exhausting cycle. It doesn't mean becoming flawless or perfect. It simply means becoming congruent where your inside matches your outside. This psychological wholeness is exactly what lies at the center of the spiritual life. In the Sermon on the Mount, in Matthew chapter 5, verse 8, Jesus makes a profound statement. He says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." We often hear the word pure and immediately think of moral perfection or the absolute absence of bad behavior. But the original Greek word used here is katharos. In the ancient world, this word described purified metals or substances that were completely unmixed, unalloyed, and genuine. Biblically, then, a pure heart is an undivided heart. It is a soul that has stopped operating through duplicity or image management. This is because God has always prioritized our internal reality over our external performance. As 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7 explicitly states, "Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." This connection became intensely real to me recently while I was meditating on Psalm chapter 32, verse 2. The verse says, "Blessed is the one in whose spirit there is no deceit." As I sat with that word deceit, I realized it doesn't just mean lying to others. It means an inward dishonesty, a manipulative concealment before God. That specific phrase, no deceit, instantly brings to mind a fascinating encounter in John chapter 1. A man named Nathanael isn't putting on a spiritual performance. When he is told about Jesus, he openly snaps, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" He isn't being polite or curated. Yet when Jesus sees Nathanael approaching in John chapter 1, verse 47, he doesn't condemn his cynicism. Instead, he says, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." Jesus honors his raw honesty. Nathanael wasn't flawless, but he was completely unpretentious. Surprised, Nathanael asks, How do you know me? And Jesus responds in verse 48, I saw you while you were still under the fig tree. Jesus was aware of him, having seen him prior to being called by Philip. Nathanael immediately recognizes that Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus promises him in verse 50 and 51 that he will see greater things, heaven open, and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. This narrative intentionally echoes the story of Jacob, whose name means deceiver, reflecting his early life of trickery and manipulation, and represents the fragmented, grasping self. But Nathanael, whom Jesus calls a true Israelite, represents the opposite: openness, sincerity, and receptive honesty before God. He was seen in his raw truth by Christ. This is the beautiful trajectory of the pure in heart. When we drop deceit, we begin to see clearly. Inward deceit distorts reality, but inward sincerity creates an openness to reality. This is why the pure in heart see God, increasingly perceiving divine reality clearly even now, just as Nathanael was invited into deeper seeing through his own honesty. James chapter 1, verse 8 warns us that a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Inward fragmentation blinds us, but undivided sincerity clears our vision to perceive divine reality. We see this perfectly in the humanity of Jesus. He embodied complete inward congruence. There was no split between his outward life and his inward reality. In John chapter 14, verse 30, he says, "The ruler of this world is coming. He has no claim on me." There were no hidden agendas or fear-based defenses in him to exploit. This is why Jesus repeatedly confronted hypocrisy so strongly. In the Gospels, he was often gentle toward doubters and confused seekers. But he sharply confronted religious performance masking inward corruption because hypocrisy fractures the self. It prioritizes image over truth. It values external religion over inward alignment. And it keeps you blind. You cannot see God if you cannot be truthful before him about where you are. This completely reframes what God is asking from you. You do not have to exhaust yourself trying to present a polished, finalized version of your life to the Creator. Purity of heart is not about arriving at a state where you never struggle. It is about arriving at a place where you stop hiding the struggle. Bring your whole, unedited self before God, who already knows you completely. Your spiritual maturity is not measured by how well you manage your reputation, but by how deeply you practice inward truthfulness. The moment you step out of image management and into raw sincerity, the internal noise quietens down and the healing of your divided self begins. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing for more conversations about identity, growth, faith, and the deeper patterns shaping our lives. And if you think someone else needs this, feel free to share it with them. I'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What part stayed with you the most? And before you go, there are a couple more reflections waiting for you here on the screen. They explore different parts of the human experience that may resonate with you too. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next reflection.